Libra, this divine revelation bears your name. There's a name written within you that has never been seen in the right light. You've always heard that you're the balanced person, the one who solves everything, the one who never leans to either side. But what if this reputation is just the visible part of a much more hidden design? Today I'll show you what lies behind this harmony that Libra carries. A pattern repeated unconsciously, a question you've never dared to voice. By the end of this video, something within you will finally make sense in a way it never has before. There's something no one ever told you about Libra, and maybe you've never even noticed it yourself. Everyone says Libra is the sign of balance, diplomacy, and peace among people, but that's only the part that appears in the light. There's a hidden design behind that gentle facade, a pattern that only reveals itself when the right light shines through you, and that's exactly what I need to talk about now. Imagine an old stained glass window, the kind found in the windows of very old buildings. From afar, it just looks like any old colored glass, without any special meaning. But when the sun shines directly on it, at the exact angle, a design appears that was there all along, invisible until that precise moment. Libra is like that. On the outside, they seem like just a kind person, someone who knows how to converse, who avoids conflict, who sees both sides of any argument effortlessly. But inside, there's a design, a secret with their name, that only appears when someone looks at it in a way that's different from the usual. You've probably heard that Libra seeks harmony. That's not a lie, but it's incomplete. Because the harmony Libra seeks out there stems from a question they never ask aloud. If I stop trying to balance everything around me, will anyone still want to be near me? This question remains hidden behind every smile, every concession, every time Libra gives up what they wanted to avoid the discomfort of disagreement. Notice how this works in practice. Someone disagrees with you, and before you even think, a part of you is already calculating, how do I keep this person from getting upset with me? It's not weakness, it's an ancient mechanism, trained from a very young age, that learned that love and acceptance come in exchange for perfect balance. And here lies the first piece of the stained glass window. Libra doesn't seek harmony because it loves peace. Libra seeks harmony because at some point it learned that imbalance was too costly to sustain. But there's a second piece to this puzzle, one that almost no one sees. While Libra spends so much energy balancing the outside world, a question keeps accumulating unanswered deep down. And my own weight, who carries it? Because every scale to function needs something on both sides. And if Libra spends its whole life adjusting the weight of others, where is its own weight in this equation? There's a curious detail about stained glass that few people know. Ancient glassmakers chose each piece of glass thinking not about what that piece showed on its own, but about what it reflected when placed against the neighboring piece. Each piece only made sense in relation to the piece next to it. Alone, it was just any old colored shard. Together with others, it became part of a larger design. And that's exactly how Libra learned to exist. Not as something whole in itself, but as something that only makes sense in relation to what surrounds it. This explains something you may have felt, but never been able to name. That feeling that you change your tone, your posture, your opinion, depending on who is in front of you. Not because you're being fake, far from it, but because a part of you genuinely sees the world that way, in relation, in contrast, in constant adjustment. The problem is that, when this becomes too automatic, you stop asking what you yourself think before asking what the other person expects to hear. And then, the question that gets stuck in your throat is always the same. Where does my adjustment to others end, and where does my own will actually begin? But there's a much deeper question than that. What if your weight, the one you've never put on a scale, wasn't a flaw to correct, but the part of you that most needs to be seen? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac. Sign to a Life of Purpose doesn't talk about balance as appearance, it talks about balance as truth, the difference between adjusting others to be accepted and adjusting yourself to finally recognize yourself. It shows, chapter by chapter, how Libra can learn to put their own weight on the scale without fear of it breaking, and how this silent change alters all other relationships around them. If you've gotten this far feeling a knot in your chest, a kind of unsettling recognition, that's no coincidence. It's the exact moment when your mind stops just listening and starts asking what to do with what you've just felt. And this discomfort, however strange it may seem, is the gateway. It doesn't last forever, and it's much easier to cross that threshold now, while the question is still alive within you, than later, when routine stifles everything again. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy, and leave a comment below. When was the last time you weighed yourself before weighing someone else? And the answer to that question explains a lot of things you may have experienced without understanding why. Libra has a reputation for being indecisive, and people laugh at it as if it were just a silly difficulty in choosing between two menu options. But it's rarely about the menu. It's about the fear that by choosing one side, you will cease to be seen as fair, as trustworthy, as that person everyone seeks out, because you never overthink things to either extreme. Choosing to your subconscious has always seemed like a risk of shattering the image that sustains the affection you receive. And if you stop to think about it, this changes the meaning of that compliment you've heard your whole life. Wow, you're so balanced. Because that compliment, said with all the good intentions in the world, might be reinforcing exactly the part of you that never learned that you're allowed to lean more to one side, that you're allowed to disagree without losing affection, that you're allowed just once to put your own weight on the scale and let it tip in your favor. Think about how many times in a group conversation you perceived both sides of an argument with a clarity that no one else had, and yet you kept that clarity to yourself just so you wouldn't seem to be taking sides. This ability to see multiple angles, which everyone praises in you, can also become a silent prison, because seeing so many sides ends up being a perfect excuse to never have to state what you yourself think without reservations. And there is a huge, albeit subtle, difference between being flexible by choice and being flexible out of fear. The first is a rare virtue, a generous way of being in the world. The second is a trap disguised as a virtue, because from the outside it looks exactly the same. The same kindness, the same willingness to listen, the same care not to impose anything on anyone. Only those who experience this flexibility firsthand can tell which of the two is actually operating at any given moment. And the question remains, how many of your concessions, honestly speaking, stemmed from choice, and how many stemmed from fear, disguised as kindness? There's something that happens to old stained glass windows that nobody expects. They crack. After centuries of withstanding rain, wind, and abrupt temperature changes between day and night, a thin crack appears right in the middle of the most beautiful design. And the curious thing is that this crack, most of the time, doesn't come from a strong blow. It arises from the accumulation of small stresses, repeated for too long, at the exact same point. With Libra, the crack always has the same origin. The point where it gives way the most is also the point where it bleeds the most inside, silently, without anyone noticing anything on the outside. Because Libra is too good at keeping the glass intact on the surface, even when it has been cracked inside for a long time. She smiles in meetings, even when she's tired of always being the one to resolve the impasse. She agrees with the group's plan, even when she wants something else. She avoids the delicate subject with the person she loves, even knowing that avoiding it only pushes the crack deeper. And the worst part isn't the crack itself. It's the habit of hiding it so well that, after a while, not even Libra herself knows where it started. Have you ever stopped to feel that? That nameless tiredness that doesn't correspond to any specific event, just a silent accumulation of times when you chose someone else's comfort over your own. That tiredness has an origin, and it's much older than any recent argument. There's also a side effect of this hidden crack that almost no one talks about. Over time, you begin to distrust your own perception. Because if you've learned to doubt what you feel every time that feeling threatens the balance of a relationship, there comes a point where you can no longer distinguish between true intuition and just the automatic fear of causing discomfort to someone. And this subtle, almost invisible confusion is one of the most silently exhausting things to carry as a Libra. There's a way to tell if a crack in your inner self is old. Pay attention to what happens when someone finally asks, with genuine interest, what you want. If your first reaction is a blank, an awkward silence, a feeling of not knowing where to begin answering, it's a sign that that inner space has been unused for too long. Not because you don't want to, but because, with so much practice in identifying what others want, the muscles that allow you to identify what you yourself want have weakened from lack of exercise. This silent crack, the one that comes from the accumulation of small concessions, is precisely the point where the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose works first. It doesn't ask you to break the entire glass at once. That would be too violent. It shows you how to recognize delicately where the crack is before it spreads to the rest of the design, before the nameless weariness becomes something more serious to bear alone. The last copies are limited, and this type of material tends to disappear without warning. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a voice inside Libra that almost never speaks first. It waits. It waits for everyone to give their opinion, waits for the atmosphere in the room, waits to understand what would be best received before opening its mouth. And over time, this waiting becomes such an automatic habit that Libra forgets that it had its own opinion even before considering those of others. Imagine two people arguing, each holding one end of the same taut rope. Libra, more often than not, doesn't choose either end. It stays in the middle, trying to feel the tension on both sides, trying to find a way so that no one has to let go of the rope. And this seems noble, it seems mature, it seems like the attitude of someone who sees beyond the obvious. But what is rarely realized is that always staying in the middle is also a way of never having to truly take a stand, of never running the risk of being alone on the side it has chosen. This voice that never chooses first wasn't born by chance. At some point, choosing a side meant losing someone or winning a conflict that hurt too much to repeat. And the body learned, even before the mind understood, that staying in the middle of the rope was safer than pulling in any direction. But holding on to this neutral position all the time has a price, and it appears very slowly. You start to no longer know what your own opinion is, in fact, about the things that matter most in your life. Notice also how this appears in the small things of everyday life. Someone asks where you want to have dinner, and the automatic response is, it doesn't matter, you choose. Someone asks what you thought of a movie, and before answering, you're already calculating what the other person liked. These aren't big decisions, but there are hundreds of them, accumulated over a lifetime. And each one is a small moment in which your own voice was silenced in the name of keeping everything comfortable for others. And the most curious thing is that this same person who hesitates to choose a restaurant is usually the one who, in moments of real crisis, finds absolute clarity to help others decide. Libra sees with impressive clarity the best path for those around them. They just can't apply that same clarity to themselves. As if their discernment yardstick worked perfectly to measure other people's lives, but froze every time they needed to measure their own. This difficulty in recognizing one's own voice before the voices of others is precisely what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose helps to unlock. It starts from a simple principle. You don't need to let go of other people's ropes to hold onto your own. There's a way to position yourself without burning bridges, and that's what Libra most needs to learn to stop getting lost amidst other people's opinions. This material may be taken down at any time, so don't delay. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Come back with me to the stained glass for a moment. When an art restorer examines one of these antique pieces, he doesn't just look at the visible design. He searches beneath the dust and time for an almost invisible mark. The signature of the glassmaker who created that piece. An initial, a small symbol, hidden in a corner that only appears when the light hits it at a very specific angle. What if there was such a signature on you? Not just any mark, but your own name, written somewhere that only appears when someone, or you yourself, looks at it in the right light. The irony is that this signature isn't hidden in the parts of you that balance the others. It's exactly in the part you most fear showing, your raw will, unvarnished, unadjusted, without concern for what others will think. Every time you give up what you want to keep the peace, that signature gets a little more covered in dust. And every time you, even with fear, let your weight show, in an opinion spoken without apologizing beforehand, in a desire expressed without over-justification, a piece of dust comes off, and the drawing with your name becomes a little more visible. This is the secret no one told you. The balance you so desperately seek outside will never complete the drawing. Only your own weight, placed fearlessly on the scale, is capable of that. And perhaps that's why so many people feel an instant affinity with Libra without being able to quite explain why. It's not just the kindness, nor just the ability to mediate. It's that, even hidden, this signature emanates something, a kind of beauty that is perceived before it is understood. People feel that there is much more there than appears on the surface, even without knowing how to name what it is. And that is precisely the invitation, to stop hiding this signature behind so much adjustment and let it appear on purpose, not by accident. Think about how many times someone has said they felt a strange peace near you, without being able to explain why. Part of it is your genuine ability to balance the environment, but part of it is also that signature trying to seep through the dust, even if only a little, even without you realizing it. People feel the design beneath the fogged glass, even when you yourself haven't yet been able to see it clearly. And it's curious to think that what attracts others to you most might not be the balance you offer, but the subdued brilliance of that part of you that you haven't yet dared to fully reveal. It is precisely this hidden signature, your name buried under the dust of constant adjustment, that the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose helps Libra to see again. Not as an abstract exercise, but as a practical process, chapter by chapter, for you to recognize where your true will has been buried beneath so many adjustments made out of love, fear, or habit. This content is too sensitive to remain available for much longer. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. In the end, perhaps the truth about Libra isn't about finding the perfect balance between yourself and the world. Perhaps it's about accepting that you also have weight, and that this weight deserves a place on the scale, not hidden beneath it. The most beautiful stained glass window isn't the one without any cracks. It's the one that let the light in exactly where it once hurt. There is a specific beauty in those who have spent their lives learning to balance everything around them, and one day decide to balance their own existence within that equation. It's not selfishness, it's justice. The same justice that Libra has always known how to recognize in others, finally applied to themselves. And when that happens, something changes almost imperceptibly. The same qualities that previously served only to maintain the peace of others now also serve to sustain a genuinely personal peace. It is through these cracks, not in spite of them, that its own design, what has always been there, finally manages to appear whole in the right light, the way it should always have been seen. Perhaps the next time someone calls you balanced, it's worth smiling inwardly, knowing a secret only you know now. Libra's true balance was never about weighing nothing. It was always about having the courage to weigh, to exist with all the weight that belongs to you, and still be able to sustain, with a delicacy that few signs possess, the fragile and real beauty of everything around you. And it is exactly like this, with your own name finally visible in the right light, that this stained glass window is complete.